and we have some questions to help drive this. So, but talking first for changes that you have made in your performance management process and thinking about what that is.
I can mention what led to a change, and that was because there was a system in place at one of the companies I worked for that became very numerical. And what was happening is people were more focused on the number, and that led to people doing like a 7.358 where the decimal point started going out because of the disagreements about the number. And so the discussion we had was, wait a second, this is not what this is supposed to be about. And then we ended up revamping and changing everything to something very, very basic. Either you were on target, you were below target, or you were above target.
How have organizations simplified the performance management process and maintain or increase the effectiveness? So how do we, we've talked a lot about being more skill-based and more frequent conversations, trying to be more agile about it. And how do we really simplify it, and then maybe at the same time increase the effectiveness?
Nick, one of the points raised earlier made me think, what are the barriers to simplifying it and changing it in general? It seems like some of the comments sort of have that as a theme. Like we'd like to see this change. So one question I had is, what's the barriers to the change? What keeps us from going to the frequent touch points?
Good morning. That happens to be just one of the barriers within our organization, is having that culture of feedback. And I just find that a lot of managers just don't feel confident yet in giving timely feedback, and they wait until it becomes a larger issue. So I think it's just building that skill set and building that confidence and the competence, but also creating the expectation and having a culture of that open feedback. Those are just a couple of the barriers. There are more.
Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum. And I think that some of the differentiation that I use when I'm approaching new managers, I do a new manager training program, and is all about the difference between managing a function, managing as a role, and becoming a leader. And if you're going to choose to become a leader in your role, not just a manager, you're going to have to invest in people.
Let's go. I think you have one more question here, if I remember right, Rich. And
Specific actions were necessary to ensure the simplified process was adopted, implemented. So more about adoption, change management processes.
So I'll jump in on this start, and I'll be really curious to get other reactions to this too. But when I first started leading in this space in performance management, my first mistake that I made was that I was able to hire one person to support me in that area. And I hired somebody that had traditional performance management experience, which is good, but it's not great. And what I really needed was somebody that was strong in organizational change management. And that is somebody, I was able to eventually bring that person to the team. And I learned too, though, that using some really strong methodologies around organizational change management, such as like the ADKAR model, and also looking at, and of course, like the traditional change curve, there are some different methodologies that we kind of pulled in to think about and take a step back from what are the changes that we were making, what were some of the stakeholders that were most influenced. And when we say most influenced, it was looking at what's the impact that this change is having on their day-to-day work and what they're traditionally been used to, and what's the level of impact of that change. And that's going to influence based on the level of change that's being impacted for that person.
Nick, you said something that intrigued me. And so not necessarily out of success, but out of awareness. Yeah, ADKAR is a good model, and it helps to ensure that you do touch on the many aspects that the change you're trying to implement.